Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm really excited to see how the community comes together to create something new and powerful out of all the challenges we're facing today. We're able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our sponsors. Join me in thanking our 2020 Denver Startup Week sponsors, our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Xero. Our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our virtual Denver Startup Cafe, and don't forget to use hashtag #DenStartupWeek to share your experience and moments of inspiration on social media.
Hey everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. We are just so thrilled that you guys are here today. Thank you for making it on a Friday afternoon. If this is your first session of the week, let us know in the chat. And if you are an old pro by Friday at 1 p.m., also let us know that in the chat. Either way, we're thrilled that you're here. My name is Kylie, and I am one of the Product Track co-chairs and a member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. I just want to give a quick shout out to my fellow co-chair on the Product Track, Ryan Margolis. He's done a ton of work this week and just want to thank him publicly. So thanks, Ryan. Everyone, we are just thankful that we are here on a Friday, the first virtual Denver Startup Week, and we've made it to this point. So here at Denver Startup Week, we really strive to make sure that all of our sessions are a safe space where our attendees can connect, learn, and grow. So before we kick off, just join me in recognizing our Denver Startup Week sponsors, especially our Product Track sponsor, Capital One. We want to thank them because they are a huge support in helping keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for everyone. Thanks for joining us specifically for this session on achieving product market fit. And we have a stellar group of panelists for you here today who are ready and willing to share their wisdom and knowledge with all of us. So be sure to add your Q&A into the chat box, as there will be time for Q&A towards the end of this presentation. So from here, I'll turn it over to Zaneta. Enjoy, everyone.
Thanks, Kylie. Thanks so much. And everybody, welcome to Achieving Product Market Fit in the B2B SaaS space, being all about the customer. We're thrilled to have you join us, and we do want to give a shout out and thank our Denver Startup Week track sponsor as well. So we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so sharing some really good thought knowledge from myself and my esteemed panel here. And we want this to be super engaging. So we want you to engage with us through the chat. You can start now by introducing yourself. Tell us hello from if you're in Denver, if you're somewhere in Colorado, in the US or abroad. We'll also have some Q&A like Kylie mentioned at the end. And we want you to engage with some polls so that you can get to know us and we can get to know you too. So my name is Zaneta Kelsey, and I am founder and marketing strategist at Transparent Solutions. I'm a DC native, Washington, DC, but I've been here in Denver for about 10 years. I got my start at IBM Global Services in the B2B SaaS and software space. Started my own consultancy and then moved here to Denver, got involved in a startup called Aspenware, and then transitioned over to Arrow Electronics to lead their IoT go-to-market work for about 4.5 years, where I led several global marketing teams. About a year ago, I pivoted to start my own marketing consultancy, and am working on that right now. So Shridhar, that's a little bit about me. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you, Zaneta. Hello, everyone. This is Shridhar Bharthulwar. I'm the founder and CEO of DreamCatcher Software. We are based right here at Colorado, And we are a B2B SaaS startup building collaboration software for business and software development teams, specifically focused on software requirements. We'll use some of the examples from DreamCatcher today to illustrate some of the topics. And it's actually my second time speaking at Denver Startup Week, so I'm really happy to be here again. Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
That's great, Shridhar. We're so happy you're here. Julie, tell us about you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Julie Pfeiffer. I am a product manager at Choozle, which is a digital advertising software company here in Denver. I've been in the ad tech space for about 10 or 12 years, I guess, depending on when you start counting. I've been previously a strategic account manager and also worked in revenue optimization for websites and apps. And moving into product management, I've been focused on making sure that we're solving the right problems and prioritizing those problems.
That's excellent. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Welcome. Glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about you.
I'm glad I'm here too. I'm just happy to be included. My name is Rob Hasefield. I'm a behavioral product strategy and gamification consultant, and I also do the same work in-house for Sparkwave, which is a startup studio in New York. Startup studio just being a startup that starts startups. So we come up with business ideas, build the first versions of them, then we find outside CEOs to come in and run the company. But in my consulting, essentially what I'm doing is I'm helping shape the product so that way the user's behavior is going to lead to them just gaining value from the product. Ultimately, value depends on the behaviors of the user. So I was invited to this largely because of my ability to focus on the user psychologically and also contextually.
That's fantastic. And we're so happy to have you with us, Rob. So you guys, we've introduced ourselves. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you? We're going to kick off a poll right here and tell us, how would you describe your role in your B2B SaaS company? Are you a founder in product development somewhere, in marketing, product management, or sales? So looking forward to hearing your responses. And we do have several people engaging us in the chat. Thank you so much. And so guys, just give us a hello in the chat and also let us know where you're coming to us from. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so we got the results back. It seems most of the people are founder, and I'm seeing some people from marketing and product marketing and product management and sales and product development as well. But about 38% are founder.
All right. Well, hello, founders and everyone else. Glad you're with us. So there we go with the poll results. Thank you. All right, let's set the stage a little bit and why we chose this topic. So I brought this topic to Shridhar a few months back and said we really should be talking with founders and folks that are starting B2B SaaS companies about how important it is in the age of the customer to make sure you're focused on the customer. And, we noticed that so many startups start kind of thinking about what are some cool features that we can bring to market to solve a problem. But that's a little bit backwards. It should be, who are the customers that we're trying to reach and what are the needs that have gone unmet in the marketplace for them? So really this session is all about making sure your customer is your foundation, and then how do you meet their needs? Thinking of how you then build on that to bring some value to the market in the product space with features, UI, UX, and so forth. So just wanted to give you guys a foundation about what we're going to talk about. So Julie, we have this here. Why don't you tell us though, what is product market fit?
Yeah, product market fit, it's one of those things that, there's maybe not a concrete definition that everybody agrees upon because it's kind of subjective. So here's a few from industry leaders. I think my favorite one is at the bottom. Product market fit is that point where the market accepts your product and they want more of it. You have customers, you've delighted them, and because of that, they are giving great word of mouth. Basically, they're keeping you busy, so you're on the right track there.
That's great. So there's also a different definition, right?
Yeah, if you're like me and you like, some really hard black and white definitions, Brad Feld does have a revenue-based definition. If you have under $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue, or MRR, you have the illusion of product market fit. Between $10,000 and $100,000 of revenue a month, you're starting to get the semblance of product market fit. But when it gets between 100,000 to 500, then you're really getting into that sweet spot of product market fit. Of course, this is going to depend on the price point of your product and the size of your total addressable market. And as far as total addressable market, obviously, the larger your market, the better that bodes for the overall success, chances of success for your company.
That's great. So now that we understand what product market fit is, help us, now that we know we have about 40% of the folks here are founders, help us understand then the stages of where this plays in the startup journey.
Yeah, so there are 3 stages in the SaaS startup journey, or even in all startup journeys. The first is the search for product market fit. That's really where we're going to be focusing today, that blue stage. Then once you've established product market fit, and we'll go into how to do that and how to know when you've achieved it, then you can start to really hone in on your sales model and get that to a point where it's scalable and repeatable. And then you can scale that. Once that's scaled, then you can scale the business. So yeah, to reiterate, we're going to be focusing on this first stage of searching for product market fit.
That's great. Thank you. So we want to engage you guys again. Where are you in the startup journey? Let's take a poll on that. Where is your business in the startup journey? Are you starting out? Have you achieved product market fit? Are you getting some semblance of it? Are you scaling and just kind of revisiting this for general information?
Okay, I see some results coming in. It seems like the majority are in the first one, answer A, which is starting to build a product.
That's great. And this is going to be a really helpful session, we hope, with the amount of content that we're providing for you. Yeah, 50%, over 50%. That's incredible. Thanks for joining, guys, and letting us know.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
so what helps you alert you, Julie, to product market fit?
Yeah, so your customers, they've bought the product and are happy. They're using their product and they'd be very reluctant to give it up. They're getting the benefits that were promised to them, so they're kind of using it in the intended way. And their usage is consistent month over month, or hopefully increasing month over month, and they're not churning out of your whole process. I think on the flip side, you'll definitely know if you're not achieving product market fit. That's, maybe your sales process is just really long, or your sales team is not getting any traction in the market. Or possibly you've gotten customers, they've gone in, they've logged into your app or your product or your service, they've tested it out, but they haven't come back. So they're churning out. And that is a sign that you're not achieving product market fit.
Those are some helpful signals, Julie. So what questions should new startups be asking?
Yeah, and this is great, especially for those 50% of you that are still in the early phases of product development. These are really key because we're gonna talk about marketing and sales and user research and all of these things. But like, if you end up developing a product that isn't solving a problem, all the great marketing and sales in the world is not going to help you. So you want to make sure that your product is solving a problem, and make sure that you can very clearly state what that problem is, that you know what that problem is. Jumping ahead a little, we're going to talk about a couple case study companies towards the end. And one of them was started because the co-founder's father has a tire shop, and the tire shop was just getting reviews from their dissatisfied customers. And they knew that they had, a healthy client base with a lot of satisfied customers. And they knew that those dissatisfied customers were the small but vocal minority. So this was a very clear problem that they had. It was definitely urgent because it was affecting their chances of securing new business. Because, I don't know about you, but first thing I do is go look at reviews when I'm looking at restaurants, dentists, whatever it is. Ask yourself also, is this problem pervasive? Using the tire shop example, I think every small business runs into this, and even larger businesses. But particularly for small businesses, this is a big problem. And is that problem painful enough for someone to pay to resolve it? I think I heard an example of there was a company that went to market with a software or a SaaS that would help founders keep track of their fundraising rounds and who they talk to, but this is also something that could be solved with Google Sheets. So it might not be painful enough to pay for another solution for it. So it, not quite urgent, not quite painful. So you really want to make sure that you're hitting all of those marks. And then another key one, are you the right person or the right people to solve this problem? Like I said before, my experience is in digital advertising. If I wanted to help with small businesses, help them like streamline their health insurance benefits enrollment, I'm not the right person to solve that problem. I would have to partner with somebody who has that expertise. So ideally, the problem that you're trying to solve capitalizes on your team's expertise. So if the answer to all of these questions is yes, then it sounds like you have a definite opportunity to solve this problem and be successful in the market. And you want to make sure that you're finding people who are experiencing the problem that you're trying to solve, talk to them, really listen to them, listen to their pain points, and keep their pain points and the problem that you're trying to solve as your North Star during all of your product development. And this will ensure that you're always keeping the customer in mind. And hopefully then you won't end up like Juicero. Hopefully there's nobody on this call who has worked with Juicero previously, but if you're not familiar, it's the story of, I think they were like a $700 Wi-Fi enabled juicer. And ultimately they were trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist because they were also selling like pouches of ingredients. I don't know if anybody remembers Capri Sun, but they kind of look like Capri Suns. Yep. And somebody realized that if you just had the pouch of the ingredients, you could squeeze those easily into your glass. So therefore you wouldn't need the juicer at all. So the juicer was trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So you want to make sure that you're trying to solve a real problem that exists, that's painful, pervasive, urgent, and that you're the right people to solve it.
That's great, Julie, and we appreciate that example. I think we all loved Capri Sun, so thanks for bringing that up. Rob just took a sip, as you said that before we moved to him, but Rob, you got a Capri Sun over there?
No, not Capri Sun today. Dr. Pepper, Diet Dr. Pepper.
That's a smart move too. So Rob, Julie's talked to us about making sure that you're solving a problem in the marketplace. Can you help us understand from your experience with user experience and user research, what's so important about that as you're trying to achieve product market fit and thinking about the customer?
Yeah, so one thing that I just really like to focus on pretty much all the time is, like when Julie was talking about solving a problem, I think it's really important to think about what's the user's role in solving that problem as well, right? Like the app, the software, it can only really be doing so much. And so this is kind of like what I'm talking about here with user involvement. It's this set of metrics that's defined by the effortful behavior that's required of the user to experience a desired outcome. All that is to say is like, imagine transactions sort of as being like on this spectrum here. You've got low user involvement on one end of the spectrum, which is like buying a table. What problem is that solving? Well, I need something in the middle of the room. Like I don't really need to do all that much once I buy it. I just buy it and the problem solved for me. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there's high user involvement, which is like buying a gym membership. If I want to get more fit and get a gym, then just owning the gym membership, that's not really going to do the trick for me, right? I need to be going to the gym regularly. I need to be using the machines, the weights, the workout programs, etc. So that's really what I'm getting at with this idea of user involvement is it's the set of behaviors that the user needs to do in order to gain value from the product. Right. So when I'm thinking about user research, I'm really thinking about like, what are those, what user behaviors do we require, and what's the current context there? Like if I've got this gym membership, am I like not, like, why am I not showing up currently? Like what sorts of factors might be playing in there? And so moving on, like this user involvement, it's useful to think about it in a cycle. Right? Like user involvement, it's transformed by the app. Like the app is sort of like this lever that leverages whatever effort the user puts into it And that, if that goes successfully, then the user has accomplished some goal that they have. And that reinforces the value of putting effort into your product. And that's really how we end up seeing like retention increase over time, is that user involvement, it's being reinforced rather than punished in some way. One way that this has come into play in my work actually is with Fabric. Fabric's a local Denver company. I've been working with them for some time now. And one of the things that we did very early on is we just thought to ourselves, like, we went through this exercise to figure out, like, okay, first off, what are the user goals? Why are they coming to Fabric? Well, Fabric's sort of like a personal relationships CRM. Like they want to stay in touch with the people in their life. They want to get intentional with their relationships. And they also want to be involved in the lives of people in their personal circles. But then what we did next was we did an audit of the app. We tried to figure out what are all the different things that users can do within Fabric that's going to signal that they're accomplishing their goals. So, like reaching out on time, consistently logging a connection with a person, that's signaling that they're staying in touch. So we're able to, both on the back end, we're able to see the metrics, how are users behaving within the app, but then we're also able to show that back to the users and tell them, hey, you're accomplishing your goals and here's how.
That's great, Rob. I love how you talked about this continuous feedback loop with these users. Brad Feld actually mentioned that on his startup session on Wednesday about this continuous feedback loop within the ecosystem. So I think you're brilliantly on it. So thank you for sharing that. And so Shridhar, as we think about what Rob is talking about in terms of user feedback and making sure within user research, you're looking at those behaviors, how do you, and I'm sorry, Rob, there's one more slide that I know you have on customer onboarding. So let me back up for just a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. Rob, how does that continuous feedback loop play into customer onboarding?
Well, I just like to think about how users' goals change over time, right? And in the way that I really define like whether a user's onboarded or not, it comes down to, do they know how the software relates to their goals? And do they know how to get there? Like if they have that information and they're able to execute on that, then I consider that person onboarded. But what's also really important to remember is that user goals are going to change over time. Like when I start using Excel, Excel's an application that can do an infinite amount of things. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to learn all of that from a 10-minute upfront like tour through the app. So I'm going to start off probably pretty simple, but then over time I'm going to be learning more and more. And since my goals are changing over time, then the app needs to be able to continuously teach me that information. Like one of the products I work with right now with SparkWave is called Guided Track. And it's essentially a very basic like coding language, and like at the beginning, people will start off, they'll like just try to be making a survey. It's super simple to make a survey within Guided Track. But then eventually they're going to start branching off into like building experiments that, have complex randomization. And then maybe they want to prototype an idea and like deliver that intervention out to the world, right? Mm-hmm. So then from there, we've got to just make sure that the users are able to continuously learn, instead of just relying on a 10-minute upfront onboarding.
That's incredibly important. And that is precisely keeping that user, that customer in mind. So thank you for that.
Can I just say one more thing real quick?
Go for it, Rob.
Is that this is where onboarding intersects with retention and reducing churn rate over time. One of the biggest problems I see in companies, or blind spots, I guess, is that they don't consider the fact that user goals change over time. And so they're only really solving a problem for people who are 1 month into their experience. But then a year into their experience, they're not solving that problem. So how could they possibly expect to keep that user at that point?
Salient point, and that brings in what Julie talked about in terms of churn. So this is really helpful. So Shridhar, then, Rob has talked about how important getting that user research is, how important it is to keep iterating on that information. How do you bring that information into the product development?
Yes, thank you, Zaneta. Yeah, so as you can imagine, product development is a central part of this phase of the journey of the startup. So when you think about product development, there are three main dimensions along which you have to excel. You have features, UI design, and UX. So those are sort of three independent dimensions along which you have to excel to be able to achieve this goal. So when you talk about features, specifically what we mean is that you have built features that customers are going to use, and they're going to be willing to pay for it, right? So so the first part here is the features, and here you can see that so the good thing about B2B SaaS is that it's a model where you can build and deploy your features very quickly. You can do it as quickly as weekly, or definitely every month. So it's a great framework for you to work very closely with your customer, interact with your customer, understand their pain, and watch them use your product, and continuously keep iterating in that cycle where you keep building the features that they want, and you validate it, and then you deploy it. So that's the cycle that you keep following, and the more cycles you have followed, the closer you're going to get to the customer's pain points and make your customers happy. And a few more tips that we give here. Make sure that your features are going to be visual in nature, so they're easy for users to follow and use. And if possible, you can try to build your customer support system within the product itself, so that if your customers are going to give you some requests for enhancements or new features and so on, they can do that directly within the product. So that makes it a little bit easier to do it. So the key here is to keep iterating and keep delivering value to your customers.
Yeah, I think that's important to mention, Shridhar, because you don't want to just, like you have here, build some whiz-bang features, or what Julie talked about in terms of the $700 juicer, when they aren't actually meeting a need. How does that bleed over into when you're thinking about UI design?
Right. So the UI design is sort of the other big dimension that I have there of the three dimensions. So that's probably one area where a lot of the startups don't pay enough attention. And so I just want to emphasize here that so when you first look at any application that you're using on the web or whatever, within first 5 seconds of you using it, you're going to form an opinion of it, that hey, this app is great, I love this, or hey, this really sucks, I don't want to use this. So within 5 seconds, that's really how long it takes for you to either love it or hate it. And most users have that in that kind of an on-off switch in their brain, right? So you want to make sure that you don't fall on the other side, on the wrong side there. So how do you get there, right? So make sure that as I said, so try to be above average in terms of UI look and feel. Of course, it's really hard to measure it, and then that's what makes it harder. But you can survey your customers or prospects. Just ask strangers, what do they think about your product? And if more than half of them are saying that they love it, then you're on the right track. So let's talk about some of the ways you can get there. Obviously, as a startup, you don't have the resources or the money to hire a big UI team, big UI UX team. So therefore, what you can do is that you can try to follow the leaders. Look at some of the leaders in the SaaS space, whether that's Salesforce or Atlassian or Slack, or could be somebody else within your space. Look at how they have approached the problem. What are the design principles that they have adopted, and you can follow those without any issue, right? So so I think that's a good way to go about it. And some other practical tips here. So fonts, so fonts are pretty big. So make sure that you're using larger fonts and have the correct modern typeface for the fonts. I see so many applications out there that have old looking fonts, and which are just not appropriate for the app. And then moving on, so you have icons. Make sure icons are done professionally, and the color schemes. And then sometimes just using rounded edges versus sharp edges. And then having online.
That's trendy right now, right, Shridhar? Rounded edges.
Exactly. As you can see in our presentation, we are using a lot of rounded edges. So, yeah. So that's definitely trending. So make sure that you follow some of this very easy to hit, very low hanging fruit that you can get to very easily. So
that's great. I love that you brought up these logos, these big enterprise companies that have much bigger budgets for making sure that their products and the look and feel, the design is top of the line. They've spent money, right, researching all of this. And so thank you for mentioning that you can simply like leverage what they have in those places. So, you know, you founded DreamCatcher. This is your software, which is incredible. You want to tell us a little bit about the journey here as it relates to UI design and experience?
Yes. So this is our version 2 of our product. You know, so yeah, this is version 2, which doesn't look too bad, but if you see version 3, which we redesigned just recently, if you go to the next slide, so this is a version 3, this was redesigned a couple of months ago. And, you know, as you can see, it's a huge difference in terms of the look and feel, the colors, and the pleasing scheme of how things are laid out. It's not as cluttered. You know, it's very easy to follow and pleasing to the eye, and the colors are nice. So that kind of a change can evoke some trust and confidence in your users. So just pay attention to that.
Now this is great, very practical and user. Go ahead, Rob, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, Shridhar, you said that people form a first impression within 5 seconds of viewing the app. And, you know, like the first version, the before picture you showed us, like, I see that and I think this app hasn't been updated since Windows XP.
Right.
You know, like the next one, I instantly feel comfortable. You know, like I look at this and definitely an improvement.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great, Rob. So how does this then bleed over into UX? Like, what are these successful milestones that are so important?
Right. So the other key dimension of product development, which has been much talked about and much researched, so I don't need to spend too much time on this, but you know, that's user experience. How many times you use an application and you pull out your head and say, who designed this feature? How could they have possibly built this feature? This is so bad, right? You know, yeah. So user experience is really absolutely very critical. And probably most companies think that they have it, they've done a great job of it until their customers start using it. And then that's when they get the reality, right? So that's a pretty big deal. So how do you get there? So I think when you look at UX, there's a very simple framework you can follow here that we show here, which is there's this user journey, which starts from onboarding, and then it goes on to the initial setup and then operating the product, and then eventually you know, you get to your success milestones, right? You know, so those are what I call your aha features that, you know, if your customers experience those aha features, you have most likely achieved customer success with those users. So that's really important. That how do you get there? How do you get to that last phase? You know, so make sure that your UX efforts are all focused on how you get the user from onboarding all the way to the success milestone. So that's not easy, right? I mean that's easier said than done, but you can get there with some of these practical tips we talk about. Make sure you know, some of these things that you pay attention to, and that you know, if you do the right amount of user research and observe your users and customers, you know, you'll be able to get there.
That's great. Shridhar, we've shared a lot of information. Even this slide is a lot of data and practical information for our audience to partake and kind of process. So why don't we hear from them, hear from our audience a little bit? I think we have a poll. So here's another question for you guys out there, kind of hello world. What methods are you using to better understand your customer? Surveys, interviews, personas, customer journey mapping. Are you familiar with all these terms? And if you aren't, guess what? We're about to talk about it. So let us know. What are you currently using?
Okay, we have some results coming in.
Great.
I see the interviews is high. Interviews, I see a lot of people responding with interviews.
Okay.
And number 2 seems to be surveys, and then personas.
That's great. Okay. So interviews and surveys primarily right now, right? Is what I'm hearing from you, Shridhar?
Yeah, I'm going to share the results here.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, that's 60, almost 70% right now are still using interviews and surveys. And that's great that you guys are using that. So I'd like to introduce you to some new thoughts on that. So, you know, as you are on a B2B SaaS journey for your company, your customers on a journey too. And as they move from kind of thinking about a new product to purchase, they are more empowered than ever with so much data at their fingertips. Have you heard of Google? B2B companies are now using Google to do 90% of their searching for new products when they need them. So keep that in mind. That's a stat from Forbes. So as you think about how a customer begins to think about leveraging a new product or bring a new product into their business, there's that awareness piece. They have to be aware of the products that are out there. So they're going to go and they're going to do their search. They're going to talk to their peers. They're going to be on the lookout for what products are going to meet their needs. Then they move into a consideration phase, which is a time when they're going to be comparing one product against another. So with you and your startup, you want to make sure once you've moved into kind of a marketing phase that you make it very easy for them to consider your product. Very easy to bullet point out the different features that you have that are going to meet their needs and talk about them in ways that are solving a problem for them. Then they move from consideration to purchase. They're ready to buy. Make sure it's very easy and seamless for them to make that purchase. Is it something that they can buy on your site, leveraging their credit card? Is it something that they'll have to go through their vendor management office internally if they're an enterprise? And if it is, do you have contracts that make it very easy for them to engage you? So now they're a customer, they've purchased your software. You heard Rob talk about onboarding, Shridhar mentioned it. Make sure there's information for them to seamlessly onboard your product, your software product, into their current environment. And then you move into this retention phase. It's not like, okay, they've purchased it, one and done, we're over. No, this is the time when you really engage and begin building that relationship with your customers. You want to talk about how you're going to let them know about new features that are coming out, but not just what you're pushing out to them, but have you created space for them to give you feedback about things that are working and things that aren't. And then you move into the loyalty place, and everybody wants to get to loyalty. What that means is you have built an advocate, a customer who is delighted and delighted enough to share your product with other people. That will decrease your marketing costs. That will decrease your sales costs. That makes things so much easier. Then you get to iterate on that loyalty with them and their advocacy by using that in terms of a case study, quotes on your website, even asking them to be a referral if you'd like them to call a potential customer on your behalf. So that's the bubbles that are, or the circles that are at the top here. At the bottom is the stages that you think about your customer as they kind of move through the sales cycle. And Shridhar will be talking about the sales cycle upcoming, but you want to think about them as they're coming into focus for you as a potential consumer, as a potential prospect, as a lead. Then they become a customer, and then an advocate. So from a marketing perspective, marketers need to keep the persona as kind of that North Star for them. And you need to make sure you bring the customer along to every piece of marketing. Marketing is so comprehensive. There's so many activities to be done within it, but I've kind of broken these out into 6 sections: brand, research, content, your marketing channels, building out campaigns, ways to reach your customers, and grow your revenue, and then your metrics. So you think about the brand section here, really it's about not just what you want to put out in the marketplace, but as you're doing your vision and your mission and your value purpose statements, it really should be back to that triangle that we talked about at the beginning. It should be thinking about who is your customer, who's your target customer, and what are the needs that they have that you need to meet. When you're positioning against other companies that are in the same space as you, how can you deliver more value to your customers than they can? I mean, this even comes into when you're thinking about how to visually represent your company through a logo or through your brand assets. Are you building out a couple of options and sharing that with potential customers and asking them for their feedback about what they like and what resonates most for them? Then you move over into research, market research. There's so much research available now today that you can Google yourself, or if you want verified, certified research, you want to go to a big firm like maybe a Forrester and leverage some of the market data that they have. Make sure you're pulling that into your process. And then we're going to talk a little bit further about personas in just a second, but even into your customer segmentation. Are you thinking about the different industries that your customers are in, or the different sizes? Are they a mid-sized company or enterprise company? And how do you reach them differently? And do they care about different things? Then you move over into content. And this is really where it comes to life after you've built your persona and you've done all your research, you've set up your company. When you build out your content, that is how customers will engage with you. When you build out your messaging map and you think about how will you use language that will resonate, that will empathize with your customer. Are you thinking about your SEO strategy? When a customer is going to go into Google and search for something. So for example, if you are an IT security B2B SaaS company that's building some really strategically safe software, are you using the targeted words that your customer on the other side of that, your potential target, your potential lead, are you using language that they're actually using? Well, how will you know what language they use? We're going to talk about that in the persona in just a moment. And your sales enablement materials, in your images, your video, your sound, and even your tone. If you have videos that you're creating, there's so many great companies that build quick videos for you now, animated videos. You don't want to be using the Mickey Mouse voice or the very soft tone voice when you're thinking about reaching a chief security officer who's thinking about protecting his large enterprise. You want to make sure you think about the end customer as you're building even your tone. And then going to channels, your website, email, how you're doing your paid ads, social media, even blogs and podcasts, making sure that you're delivering content that's super relevant to your end customer. And then think about campaigns. So this is an example that I know of personally. If your end customer, like I said, is some chief data officer or chief security officer at a very large enterprise, you don't want to incentivize them to engage you with the $25 Amazon gift card. They're making $250,000, $300,000 a year. They're not going to be fazed by your $25 gift card. So you want to make sure, even in your incentives, when you're building campaigns, in your ads, that you make sure that you're keeping who your end target is in mind and don't waste money unnecessarily. And then finally, with your metrics, don't just have marketing metrics, which are very important to make sure you're delivering value for your business, but make sure that you have customer metrics. That means you're delivering value and hearing specifically how you can do better for your customers. So that's your NPS score. That's called net promoter score. How satisfied and dissatisfied, how likely is this customer to recommend you to someone else? That is such a key metric. Your net value score, their overall satisfaction with you, and of course, the customer experience index. So moving on, I said I would talk about personas. Personas for marketing should be your North Star for the marketing team. Personas are kind of a sketch, a composite view of what your target customer would look like. It takes into account their demographics, information about their age. Are they a millennial? Are they not? You have to reach people in different ways, in the ways they like to be reached. Are they mid-career, late career? Because this may be somebody who wants to knock the ball out of the park this is their final thing that they're going to do. How are you going to position your software to meet their needs? What are their professional characteristics? Are they savvy technically? Are they not? Do they prefer that you engage them via phone? Do they prefer that you engage them via email? These are very important things to collect and compile into a persona. Even thinking about how do they want you to reach them, not how do you want to reach them, or just what your marketing budget would allow, but how do they want to be reached? And, again, going back to this chief data officer, they like to be engaged with peer-to-peer. So they do small dinners and even small Zoom groups with different organizations, and they make time for vendors to engage them that way, but they hate getting emails. So don't spend your money building out huge email campaigns when you can take that money collectively and reach a couple of key targeted folks at a Zoom dinner or an online Zoom breakfast or something like that. So I know that you guys responded and said, hey, we're doing interviews, we're doing surveys. Take that interview and that survey data and begin building out your personas. Then finally, you know, Shridhar and I worked together on some things for DreamCatcher. And this is a view of DreamCatcher's kind of before key messaging. And you'll see here, it's talking about visualize and defining and managing product features visually, which is an important piece of what DreamCatcher offers from a features perspective. But after doing some of that surveying and interviewing with customers, we found that the language really that they're most concerned about is about the outcomes that are produced when you get better requirements when you're doing your software gathering. So again, just the difference between talking about visualizing, yes, that's a very important feature of the software. But when you come here, you see that after spending some time with some customers and talking about what they really care about at the end of the day, they really care about better requirements, producing better outcomes. So Shridhar, I spent a good deal of time here talking about how important it is in the marketing lifecycle to keep the customer as a central focus. How does that come over into the sales cycle?
Yes, so from a sales point of view, of course, it is very important that you have a system in place for your sales process. I see so many startups that really don't have a system at all. So make sure you have a system in place. You know, so you see an example of a system out here, which walks you through the different steps of the process and how you're going to get to the, you know, the closing of the contract with the customer. So the thing to keep in mind here is that make sure that you're not selling your product. You want to be selling the benefits using a consultative approach. So that's the key thing, is to have a consultative sales approach. And how do you do that? So you do that by asking a lot of questions to your prospects, and you let them talk more. You ask questions and you let them talk more, and then you assess their pain points. And you really want to focus on demonstrating the benefits of the product and not the features. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of how you can keep the customer at the center of your sales process.
That's great. Thank you, Shridhar. So I think it's time for another poll. You guys, thanks so much for engaging with us and sharing with us where you are in your process here. Let's ask you now, which of the following is the key central metric that you use in SaaS to track and follow? Which of the following is the single key SaaS metric you track and follow? Shridhar, you want to explain what some of these are to people who might not be familiar before you hop into the...
Yes. So the ARR, which is the first option, is annual recurring revenue. The MRR is monthly recurring revenue. And third one is LTV, which is a lifetime value of the customer. Fourth one is customer acquisition costs. And finally, the fifth one is the LTV to CAC ratio.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay. So, we have some results coming in.
Yeah, where are we with the results?
Okay, so I'm going to share the results here in a second. So it seems like, I think most people got this right, so they picked answer E, which is really the single metric that they should be focusing on.
That's great. You guys are smart. Doing it right. Excellent. So Shridhar, talk to us a little bit more about metrics.
Yes, so from a SaaS metric point of view, so the LTV to CAC ratio, that is sort of your golden metric. That has almost everything baked into it. So, this takes into account the churn rate of your customer, which is very important. You want to keep that as low as possible. And then also keeps into account, takes into account the customer acquisition cost, which is your total sales and marketing costs for acquiring a customer. So here you can, so that really is your single metric. But apart from that, you also have very detailed metrics that you can track for marketing, sales, and customer success. So so I have some of them listed here. I don't want to go into much of detail here, so we can go to the next slide.
That's great. So Julie, help us understand. So you got your startup launched. You've done your user research. You did your product features. You've done your marketing. And you're trying to figure out how to get to this product market fit. Tell us more.
Yeah, so this is going to be once you have customers who've used your product. So this does kind of skip past the MVP, minimum viable product phase. And if just a quick MVP, like somebody was asking, how can you kind of validate that you're on to product market fit? There's easy ways that are really low touch to do an MVP, like maybe a website that's just like, hey, sign up for more info to know when this product is going to be available. And that's a really low effort way to gather potential interest and see if you're on the right track. But once you have customers who have used your product, and the used part is really key, survey them, ask them, how would you feel if you couldn't have access to this product? Very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed. The goal eventually is to get to more than 40% of them saying that they're very disappointed. Those folks who would be very disappointed, ask them, hey, what's the main benefit of this product to you? In the case of like the company that I work for, they might say, hey, it's really easy to use and the service is really great. I trust it. It's enjoyable. And then you want to develop features that build on those benefits, and of course that are still solving their main problems. For the somewhat disappointed folks, ask them, hey, do these benefits resonate with you? The trusted, convenient, enjoyable, the benefits that the first group said. And then ask them, hey, for the people that do resonate with those benefits, ask, how can we improve the product for you? And then build those features. And then what ends up happening is you have kind of two roadmaps, one for the very disappointed folks and one for the somewhat disappointed folks. This ensures that you're not like just shrinking your potential market just to those people who already love your product, or just to the people who are kind of on the fence. This ultimately should, move those somewhat disappointed folks so that they would ultimately be very disappointed if they couldn't use your product, and increase that number. So, and you might have to, this is a continuous process. Rob mentioned user testing is continuous. You're going to have to iterate, resurvey. You might end up also having to iterate on your target customer segment. You might think that your target customer segment is CFOs and find out that it's really the actual accountants who are doing the books.
That's a great point. And Julie, we have about 8 minutes left. I know you talked already about one of the examples that you have, but can you talk us through just a quick case study?
So 2 quick examples. Basecamp, they kind of stumbled upon their problem. They were initially a web design firm, and they were using email to manage their projects, because this was a while ago and things were falling through the cracks, as is the case with email. So they shopped around for a project management tool and didn't really like any of the things on the market. So, they had a definite problem, and their web design firm experience meant that they were kind of ideally positioned to solve it. So they built their own tool, and then their workflow got better, their customers noticed, and then their customers started asking, hey, what are you using? And then their Basecamp business was born. And I think it was within a year that it was making more money than their original website design firm. So they kind of stumbled upon their problem. And then Podium, they started with the problem. They're the tire shop folks. One of the co-founders' fathers has a local tire shop, and they were only getting those unhappy reviews because they realized it was really hard for small businesses to reach out to customers and get those reviews in an easy manner. So they made a tool to make it so that they can reach out to customers via text message. And they knew that they were onto something from the beginning. They knew that they had a painful, pervasive problem to solve, and they kept that focus on product market fit all the time. It made it easier for them to raise funds, and it also made it easier for them to make sure that they were working with the proper investors, because they did have some naysayers, and those naysayers, they're like, you know what, we're going to work with the other people that, kind of get what we're trying to do. So, and then they achieved product market fit, and then they realized that their messaging service could also solve other problems for business. So now they're a very successful business based out of, I think, Lehi, Utah. So I know Denver Startup Week is all about startups that are not in the Bay Area. So shout out to Podium in Lehi, Utah.
Shout out to Podium. They're doing well. That's great. Thank you. So question for us, right? You guys and myself, as we part from this session, having shared so much about keeping that customer, keeping customer centricity as you're trying to achieve this product market fit. In just 30 seconds, each of us, what would you say is one piece of advice that you really want people to take away? Rob, I'm going to start with you. Oh, you're on mute, Rob.
Yeah, sure. So I would say If people could take anything away from my part, it's just that user behavior is crucial. Like think about what goals, what problems you're solving for people, but then think about what the role of the user is in that, because the product can actually do a lot to shape that user behavior and to influence in certain ways. But ultimately, like, you still need to be accomplishing the goal, and the user needs to take a role in that.
That's excellent. Thank you, Rob. Shridhar, what about you?
Right. So as you're trying to achieve the product market fit, make sure that you're also focusing on marketing sales. You may have a great product and a great team to build the product, but if you don't have the right skills to do marketing and sales, you will not achieve the traction which you need to be able to demonstrate product market fit.
That's great. Thank you. And Julie, what about you?
Yeah, so just as always, make sure that you clearly know what problem you're trying to solve with your product, and make sure that that problem is painful, pervasive, urgent, and that you're the right people to solve it.
I like those 4 things, Julie. You did that really well. I have one, but it kind of flows to 2, is take the time and the resources to do the research. Market research, user research, individual research. Take those take that information that you get from surveying and interview and market data and put it into personas, because personas are powerful. So with that, we want to know what questions folks have been feeding into the chat. So I think Shridhar or Julie, you guys are gonna take that over. What questions do we have from the audience?
We've got a few good ones. Rob and I answered a couple in the chat, but some that we didn't get to. Jason has a question that I think would be great for Shridhar. Any easily overlooked but critical early hires for software/hardware product design?
Right. Make sure that, obviously, I think you're going to have good talent to take care of development, but make sure that you also have people who can do testing for you. Testing is an area that can fall through the cracks easily. And also product management, just being able to understand the market space and doing the market research to understand the competitive landscape. So that's also a good skill to add to your team.
Shridhar, if I could tack on to that, make sure that you also have a great architect who is designing the kind of the back end and the architecture of your service. That's definitely a separate and additional skill set in addition to like front end and back end development. So find someone who is an architecture expert.
Agree.
Let's see, which other questions have we not answered in the chat? Because I know we're running a little low on time.
One question that, I tried to get to in the chat, but it's a pretty big one, but how can I highlight and bring awareness to question and evaluate biases that our product team is layering into their roadmap that are impacting our product market fit? And I thought that was a good juicy one.
Yeah, go after it, Rob.
Oh, okay. Well, so the way that I responded in the chat was just that, I think it's really important to be tracking user feedback, and do it in a way that's going to allow you to see how frequently you're receiving the same or similar feedback. Like, it's an incredibly useful exercise to go back into the feedback and continuously clump it into different categories, right? Just so you really get a sense of how common it is. But also, if you're tracking your users' behavior, then you'll be able to see very explicitly how they're behaving differently or similarly to your product team. Because if they're behaving pretty differently, then you've got to wonder, how different are our ideas going to be about the direction that the product should go?
That's a great response, Rob. Shridhar, you have anything to add to that one?
Not to that one. Maybe Julie can add. I think that's in her domain.
I will confess, I was looking at the other questions and
okay.
making sure that they saw.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
want to make sure everyone gets their questions answered. But yeah, Zaneta, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say also, if you guys have specific questions, here's ways to reach us if I'd like to reach out directly to us. So just wanted to put that out there as well. Okay, Julie, back to you.
Okay, great. Justin, thanks for the compliments. And he had a question that we addressed in the chat, but I think it's a fairly universal one. So when speaking with interviewing prospective customers, at what point should you know you're solving the right problem? probably when enough people start indicating similar pain points or after going through the 5 whys, but do you recommend interviewing as many customers or potential customers as possible? I absolutely recommend interviewing as many potential customers as possible. This also might be as part of your sales process. And you should have an idea of what problem you're solving, like a hypothesis. And if in talking to potential customers, you're finding out that that's maybe not really resonating with them, or that they aren't really willing to pay for it, that might be a good indicator. A little bit of an example. So I work at a digital advertising company called Choozle, and it was called Choozle because it started out as a visual voting platform. Like, hey, Zaneta, I'm having a hard time picking these 4 boots, and I put the 4 boots in a Choozle and I send it to her and she helps me pick. And they realized, kind of early on that like this might be more of a feature than a whole platform, and that the problem wasn't really resonating with consumers. So they switched to B2B. And the problem really wasn't resonating with advertising agencies either. But then in talking to those advertising agencies, the early Choozle founders realized that those advertising agencies were looking for data analytics, and they were trying to get in access to programmatic advertising tools, which at the time, were only available to like very large advertising agency. So they kind of found a problem by going through the sales process and talking to the customers and listening. I think listening, we talk about, hey, talk to people, but listen to those people. So and especially any product manager, it's all about like just making sure that you're always in contact with your customers, and you can you're hearing those concerns regularly, early, often, even after you've established product market fit.
Yeah, and I would answer that too, Julie, by saying, kind of do in your market research, understand the size of your market. If your market size is pretty large, then you're going to want to do surveying based on kind of how many folks you have that you're going to try to reach in your market space. So think about how many customers overall you need to get to each stage, going back to the kind of that financial definition of product market fit, and then leverage and then use that number to kind of think about how many customers you need to really get a good understanding of what their needs are, and if you're going to be in a position to meet those needs. So I know we're a couple of minutes over. We did want to make sure that you guys had a chance to maybe take a screenshot of these resources that we put together for you to go back and look at. We also will be, Denver Startup Week will be posting this particular video on YouTube, so you can go back and watch it again, as well as they will be posting these slides at some point in the future. So check back with Denver Startup Week. And with that, I just want to thank Shridhar, Julie, and Rob. It's been such a fun ride with you guys putting this together. And thank you guys out there in the audience for visiting with us and engaging. I'm so appreciative of all the engagement we got as well. And we want to thank Denver Startup Week for always being a diverse, inclusive environment that's accessible for everyone. So thank you, Denver Startup Week. And Adina, if you're out there, we're turning it back over to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.